Hi, this is Steve Hargadon in Walkerstations.net and the Future of Education. I'm joined by Teresa Beffa, Conversation.net's co-host. Hi, Terry.
Hi. Hello.
Glad to have you here. And we are joined by a special guest tonight, Tara Hunt, author of The Wolfy Factor. It is Tuesday, February 2nd, 2010. Welcome, Tara.
Did we lose you, Tara?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I have to click my microphone on.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
This is really fun. I can't tell you. I'm going to turn my webcam on. I meant to do that earlier, but I'm going to. And Terry, you don't need to turn your webcam on. I won't leave mine on. But I want to show you the copy of my copy of your book. It'll take just a second for that to come up. While we're doing that, I'll go to the next slide. FutureOfEducation.com and Conversations.net are sponsored by Illuminate. We appreciate that support. And my work project is LearnCentral.org, the free social network for educators with Illuminate baked in. So LearnCentral.org. If this is your first time at Illuminate, I want to show you how you can use the environment. Stuttering while the Logitech webcam software comes up. So. Second. Tomorrow, James Paul G on video games. That should be a very popular show. He's got a terrific voice on that. Thursday, Shell Israel. Next week, February 9th, Lisa Gillis on online high schools. Then Larry Johnson, Clay Shirky. I think that's next Thursday. David Siteman Garland. Then Dan Pink on the 17th. Online Education on the 18th, Scott Rosenberg on March 2nd, Sharon Peters, 21st Century Skills, Tony Wagner, and of course, Sir Ken Robinson on March 30th, which is a blast. Okay, if this is your first time in Illuminate, this is an interactive environment, and you'll have the chance to participate both through the features in Illuminate, and also if you'd like to grab the mic, you can do so by raising your hand, and I'll show that icon is. It's the larger hand with the green up arrow. Click on that to let us know you're interested in taking the mic. This is your participant window. You can see the others who are in the live session. This is being recorded. If you go down here to the chat area, you can send a message to the others in the room. You can comment, put in a link, make note of something that was of interest to you. You can also send private messages, but Tara, Teresa, and I actually see those. There's nothing fully private since we're moderators. And I'm going to give you access to the whiteboard right now, those of you who are listening. Click on the little wand with the red star and let us know where you're. You can also shout out in the chat. Again, a North America-centric crowd tonight. I think it was because I had trouble sending the bulk email out with the international time zones in it, and so I had to remove those. I think that knocked away some of our international audience. But we do have Mexico, it looks like. Mexico City. Okay, so now I am going to that webcam going. Tara, I want to show you my copy of the book. Okay, France, sorry you're not seeing that, but sure glad to have you here.
Well, Tara, are you in Canada?
I am in Canada.
I was going to say, you're representing at least. We've got 3 continents, 4 with France.
Hey, not bad. So give me a smiley face when you can see me. I want to show you what the deal is here. Okay, good. Okay, so this is my copy of Tara's book. I'm hoping you can see the dog-eared pages. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that I filled the book with notes.
Wow, that's a beautiful thing.
I know, I crossed them out after I've put them into my Google Docs. But Tara, this was just a phenomenally interesting book to me. And I actually was surprised at how many times I wrote "wow" in the margins of the book. Are you hearing this from anybody else? You've got to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everybody has their own experience of the book. It's always wonderful to hear from people that have the wow experience, and I do get those, and it reminds me of why I wrote the book in the first place. So that it connects with people and their experiences. And your wow, you can tell me whether this is true or not, but your wow probably comes from me saying what you're already been feeling for some time.
Absolutely. In fact, I looked back on my email and found a message that Bob Carlton had sent introducing the two of us 18 months ago. And I thought, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't get to actually watch this unfold in real time. You and I never connected, but what a joy that would have been.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how these things happen. And Bob is a smart guy.
Yeah, he's a very smart guy. Okay, so one of the funny things for me about this book is it actually ends up being kind of a book of lists. So I feel as though you did a really nice job of trying to organize some important thoughts and put them in lists. And as I go through the book, I've tried to do the same thing, sort of keep it in list fashion. But before we go there, it feels to me like there's a little bit of an elephant in the room, and that's the title. So I notice that when I'm mentioning to people the book, I have to always say something after I say the Wolfy Factor. Like, the book is much more serious than it sounds. So why don't you explain why you chose Wolfy and give us a sense of how important you feel that is. Well,
to give you the absolute truth, I did not choose Wolfy. It was actually my editor's choice at Crown Publishing. The original working title of the book was How to Be a Social Capitalist, but he felt that it didn't actually give the book enough punch on the shelf. And I was, even though I'm a big fan of the concept, a lot of my inspiration came from Cory Doctorow's book. And just to back that up, Cory Doctorow's book, Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom, is where the word Wolfy comes from. So, in that book, in the future, there's no money anymore. Instead, there's this thing called Wolfy, which is a currency, and you gain Wolfy by being nice, networked, or notable. Basically, in Cory's book, and he talks about this the way that the future is set up. The characters gain or lose Wolfy throughout the book based on how other people feel about them, basically. And when I was reading Cory's book, it occurred to me that a lot of the discussions that we were having around social capital really actually brought Cory's ideas to light. And what he was talking about in Down on the Magic Kingdom was very, very astute, because what he was talking about was how we operate in online communities today. And there was no wonder that Wolfy was being used quite frequently in IRC rooms and Usenet groups as sort of a vote up on your confidence about somebody. So I did include a story about Wolfy in the opening chapter, and my publisher basically said that is a terrific story, and it's a terrific word. Let's call it the Wolfy Factor. And even though Cory is very open and very I guess he does all the Creative Commons stuff. He shares everything that he does. He doesn't charge you for using his ideas. I was a little nervous to put it on the front cover of my book. But what's really nice about having it on the front cover is almost instantly people have gone out to find Cory's book, the original Down on the Magic Kingdom, read it for a better sense of context. So it actually has helped, I think, spread the word on his fantastic story as well.
Well, it's very memorable. It's not going to be confused with anything else. As soon as you say Wolfy, it's easy to look up and find. So, I want to. Could you mind turning your mic off just for a second, Tara? Because we're getting that echo. So, in my sort of simplistic way, I drew a diagram that Wolfy equals social capital, and that authenticity leads to relationships and connections, which lead to trust, which leads to social capital. Is that a fair kind of formula?
Yeah, I think that it's a nice simple way to present it. Absolutely, I think it's I think I have a similar sort of formula that I used in early presentations on the subject. Was connections over time equals trust equals Wolfy, basically. So you've just added some very important dimensions to it with authenticity.
Okay, and I was really struck by this quote. You said, "I find the more I give to the community in terms of my higher purpose, by continuing to contribute to the growth of building blocks for independence and volunteering my time and expertise to help empower and inspire individuals, the more I get back in reputation, trust, and connections. It all leads to more opportunities and connections and a great deal of actual monetary capital." So I think you've experienced that. I definitely know in my life I've experienced that. But do you get some pushback from traditional organizations who say, this is just fluff?
Yeah, well, that's actually funny that you should say that. That's probably, I mean, alongside the word Wolfy itself, which sounds kind of fun and fluffy in itself, right? And why you need to follow up explaining the book with it's more serious than it sounds, is the idea that a lot of the concepts in this book are fluffy, and they are. Like I'm the first to admit that they're fluffy. But I think, and this is a lot of the work that I'm doing now, and on my second book. Hopefully someday it'll come out. I've gotten a little sidetracked with the startup now. But is what about values? Like what we do value, right? And the thing is that there's this big gulf between what we see as traditional business strategy, traditional marketing strategy, the way that business thinks and operates, and the way that online communities think and operate. And so, it's about time that business gets a little fluffier, in my opinion, right? So one of the examples that I love to give, with my more recent work is when somebody says things like, oh, well, yeah, there's a lot of twittering of lunches on Twitter, but there's some good stuff on there too. And I think that's a sign of the lack of understanding of what really is important to people in these mediums and what we do value. And no, maybe we don't value the lunch itself, but there's subtext in a lot of those tweets. And what I like to say is that if somebody is tweeting about their lunch, for instance, then they're probably trying to communicate something a lot deeper to you. They're tweeting about maybe they're eating something vegetarian, so they're trying to say, listen, I'm vegetarian, or I'm trying to eat healthy, or I would really like to show my friends that my eating habits are improving. That sort of thing is happening in the subtext. And a lot of, I think, business approach to these social networks misses the importance of that, the human connections that come from the subtext of those quote-unquote inane tweets that people talk about.
I mean, like, for instance, the relevancy? Do you see, hello?
Sorry?
Are you still there?
Yeah.
With for instance, the relevancy, people are, it's echoing in the background again. Oops. I think a lot of people are missing that subcontext of relevance as well.
In what way? Sorry, I'm not understanding the...
Well, when you're talking about the value and the mundane comments that are out there, and people are not expressing, they're not really expressing what they want to be saying. With the example you gave with the vegetarian, it's relevant, but they're just not communicating in a way that everybody else think is relevant. Do you see that as an issue?
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily the issue at all. I think the issue here is that they are communicating in the way that you would communicate with your friends, and that is relevant in itself, right? Some people are direct, some people are indirect about whether or not they're saying I'm eating healthy. I think if you went onto Twitter and you said I'm a healthy eater, look at me, which is it's the subtext of the I'm eating a vegan burger, for instance. People would think of you as being a bit of a blowhard, but if you're talking about the vegan burger, they might imagine the vegan burger and understand that subtext. And this is the beautiful part of being human, and this is the beautiful thing that happens on these networks. And that's where we're having a tough time connecting with businesses on Twitter, on Facebook, on Flickr, on any sort of social network, on our blogs. We're absolutely missing each other. We're speaking a totally different language, and the things that we value in these online communities are the connections. Things like generosity. What was referred to in the Wolfy Factor about giving and the higher purpose and giving to the community is a huge part of what online communities are all about, right? The generosity is connected directly to reciprocity, which in reciprocity, and I think I quoted him throughout the book, Matt Ridley has shown, as well as other social scientists have shown, that reciprocity itself is a tie that binds these communities.
So Tara, I didn't have any, I guess I anticipated that others would see this potentially from a business perspective as fluffy, but for me it was very tangible, meaning somehow something has dramatically changed with social media, which by giving the audience a voice requires that the relationship between the provider or company become more authentic, and that's actually a huge benefit to the company themselves, even though they may not see that right off the bat.
Well, definitely authenticity is something that a lot of companies have a difficult time embracing, right? That the whole section on embrace the chaos, I think that's the subtext there, right? Is that no longer can PR engines and the image of this perfect company be accepted. It's now about, companies are, much like human beings, make mistakes, and it's what you do with it after that point that really demonstrates to the world, who you are, even if you are a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And the inability for a lot of organizations to join in that, the conversation that's going on. And I'll give a specific example here that happened earlier last year, is when Mint.com published the qualify your numbers legal letter on TechCrunch from Intuit. And at the time I was actually working at Intuit, And people were asking, what's happening, and knowing that I worked at Intuit, I came out and I said, I'm not sure, I'm checking into it. Meanwhile, the PR team was trying to come up with a really good statement to make Intuit look good coming out of this. And what happened is when they put that statement out there, everybody rejected it because it was very legalese, very PR driven. It wasn't, we didn't understand the new rules and we screwed up. There was none of that. And if they would have just said, boy, we really screwed this up, people would have liked Intuit a lot better in their response to that because it would have been more authentic.
Well, I remember, finding books in the 70s and 80s about honest business or open businesses, and kind of there was the little movement towards, really sort of thoughtful economics that feels like it kind of disappeared, between then and now. But I definitely have the sense that the medium, the social media, are creating an environment in which there's much more of an opportunity for a company to say, okay, we're going to try something, and you tell us if you like it, and if you don't, we won't do it, and if you do, we will do it, versus let's come up with an idea, we'll market it, and even if it's not succeeding or a good idea, everybody's sort of dependent on that idea moving forward, and so it keeps moving forward. So, I guess I'm really appreciative of your bringing that out, and think that that the examples in the book and the way you describe it do a really good job of sort of giving the sense of how important it is now for companies to see this as an opportunity.
It definitely is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to actually demonstrate that there are human beings that are working within a company and that they're listening as well, right? So a company that, and I'm going to back up for a little bit here. I mean, there are definitely examples of companies that get away with this. For instance, and I think the one that comes to mind for everybody is Apple, right? So Apple is incredibly secretive. Apple holds all their cards to the chest. They don't do any sort of we're going to put something out there and get back feedback and then come out with the next version. They come out with, the iPad after months and months of rumors, and people are dazzled. I mean, I know I'm excited to get one when I can afford it when it comes out. But, they're really good at putting that stuff out. But but Apple is Apple, right? They really haven't had a lot of dogs, I guess, over the last couple of years. People have been, it's like they have some sort of time machine into the future that they can go to, consult the future, and come back and design the product of the future. And I'm not sure if they made a deal with the devil or what they've done in order to be able to do that, but they're pretty consistent on that level. But the problem is a lot of companies see that and they think, well, we're Apple too, and we can do this. We can be all secretive and then come out with this great thing, and everybody's going to be dazzled. And it's a very rare thing for a company to be able to pull that off nowadays. So a much more certain strategy is definitely, put out a small step and get feedback before you invest a whole lot of time and money and people's heart and soul and hours into creating something that people will kind of look at cockeyed, right? And so there's a huge advantage to that. You're saving money, you're innovating with your community. And one of my most favorite quotes of all time is, and a friend of mine, Susan, who runs Office Nomads up in Seattle, had this posted on her desk. And I don't know who the original person was that said it, but it's people will promote what they help build. And if you get your community of users behind you and what you're building, your community of customers, your friends, your family, and they feel like they're invested in a project, at the end of the day, they're going to help make sure that project is successful. So there's a much better strategy there, unless you're Apple, right, to be open and transparent about what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that brings up such a. I'm sorry, Steve.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that brings up a really good point. I love the part you brought about the background community. They're also adding value, and nobody really talks bad about Apple, but if anybody does talk about it, you're there, you're present, everybody around you has that big community. They're going to squash down anybody that's not on board. So kind of building your influence and your ambassadors.
Yeah, well, Apple is a very strange example and kind of an anomaly. But I talk a lot about Apple in the book, in the Creating Amazing Customer Experiences section of the book, where if you think about Cory Doctorow's concept, and it's getting Wolfy by being nice, networked, and notable, and you were to be able to take any of those away and be left with one, it would be notable. So I think, and Apple is that company. They're not nice. They don't do a lot of networking, but they certainly have made a name for themselves, being very, very notable. So as you just said, they're really focused on the customer experience. Absolutely, it's that amazing customer experience. I can imagine how many prototypes are thrown away at Apple before they let something go through. I think it's got to make everybody in the company jump up and down and go, wow, right? So Apple is an interesting example, but not the norm. Like if you think you're going to be the next Apple, don't do it. Design with your community in mind, in step by step.
Well, we could easily spend probably 5 hours talking about many different aspects of the book, but I think it might be helpful for those who haven't read the book or are hearing this for the first time to kind of give a basic outline of the message of the book. And I think that you use the principles that you developed at RIA. Am I saying that correctly, RIA?
Yeah, you're saying that correctly, yeah.
Those is the outline of the book. So the first one is stop talking and start listening. That was really I thought that was a great way to start. And I think you sort of you communicate through the book the value of people who point out problems to you. So do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the 5 principles, which I don't know if we'll be going through them all, but I'll just quickly list them off. Stop talking, start listening. And the second one is become part of the community that you serve. Number 3 is create amazing customer experiences. Number 4, embrace the chaos. And number 5, find your higher purpose. And the 5 of them, I think, go in order. And they're also from easy to most difficult, in my opinion. So a lot of companies, I think this is the message that this is sort of the gateway drug, I guess you could call it, the message that they need to really understand the power of communities, is the being able to listen to feedback. And then what do you do with the feedback is usually where they stop and feel like like deers in the headlight, right? So throughout a big part of this section was dedicated to like, what do you do with different types of feedback, right? Negative feedback. How do you deal with negative feedback, and what is constructive and what is what we like to call online troll-like behavior. And troll-like behavior is just somebody saying, you're an idiot, or shut up, you're stupid, that sort of thing. Like, what do you do with that type of behavior? And a lot of companies don't know how to react to that, and they'll take that stuff really to heart. And so I even, take time to explain the concept of don't feed the trolls, right? The person that comes and spends a lot of time polluting a wiki or leaving a lot of blog comments that are really just negative for the sake of being negative and not really good constructive feedback is, not responding to that. But when there is good constructive feedback, even if it hurts, even if it's like, oh, this is my baby and you're being negative about my baby, because I would say that probably most people that start a company, it's like another child to them. I know for me, any company that I've ever been invested in, I feel very personally in love with that idea. But sometimes you have to be able to take the negative feedback and incorporate it to actually improve on it. Now, there's also another type of feedback, which is that from expert users, right? And the example that I give in the book by Khoi Vinh, who designed the original gorgeous New York Times website, is that he listened to the experts, right? He listened to those people that were really savvy web users and got excited about their ideas. But then he made sure that he designed for those, everyday, not so savvy web users so that they could still enjoy their New York Times experience. And so there's like all sorts of implications to how you implement feedback. It's not just about like, oh, hey, here's our website or here's our product, and we'll take every piece of feedback and incorporate it. Then you're going to end up with some sort of muddled, over-featured stew, right? Instead, it's getting smarter about how you listen to that feedback and being able to get smarter about what people actually do want rather than necessarily what they're asking for.
So your fifth principle, which a couple of people mentioned in the chat there, the finding your higher purpose, you finally gave me an opportunity to talk about one of my favorite movie scenes of all time, which is The Miracle on 34th Street, when the Santa Claus starts telling the customers what other stores carry the cheaper product. Have you seen that scene, and did that resonate with you?
I'm really embarrassed to admit that I have not seen the whole movie. I've seen bits and pieces of the movie, and I like classic films. But who's the main character? What's his name? The actor that plays him?
Oh, well, there's an old version and a new version. Is it Baldwin? No,
the old version, the classic version. Who's the guy that?
Oh, I don't know.
Anyways, he's just way too earnest for me. So I don't watch many of his movies.
Well, that's funny. But there's this great scene in the movie where he actually starts telling the parents of the kids, where to go to get the products cheaper. And of course, in the movie version of life, it turns out to be sort of brilliantly successful. Everybody's coming to the store because they're so helpful. And I don't think we see a lot of that, but you mentioned Amazon, or I think you do, during this, and I realized, I really do trust Amazon, and I do feel like they point me to used books all the time that are cheaper, although they probably make a commission on that.
Yeah, well, actually, even, Amazon is great, and they do make a commission, but I think a really brilliant, very higher purpose example, and one of the darlings of the Wolfy Factor is Zappos. And there's many, many stories circulating online where Zappos, and this is part of their customer service policy, if you call up Zappos and you're like, this pair of shoes that I was looking for, or this handbag, or this dress that I was looking at on your site seems to be out of stock. When are you going to get back in stock? And the customer service person will look and be like, oh, well, looks like we don't have an order in for a while, but hey, I just found that same pair of shoes or that handbag or that dress over on this other website. Do you want me to send you the URL? And they don't get a commission from it. They don't get any sort of kickback from doing that. They're just trying to help their customers, and that is the the similar story to the Miracle on 34th Street, where they come back. People constantly come back to Zappos because of that action. So it does happen in real life.
So I was interested that that Ning is never actually mentioned in the book. Was there a reason you didn't mention Ning as a social network, or was it just not on your radar?
Oh, it's a interesting observation. I guess when I was writing the book, it wasn't something that I was using, and yeah, I mean, I have nothing against Ning in particular. I guess I've set up probably since the book came out, I set up one network on Ning, but haven't really used it a lot. But I know a lot of people get quite a bit out of it and being able to create your own. I'm more of a WordPress girl, but that's only my personal choice. And now that they have BuddyPress, I tend to.
Let me tell you where I was going with that. So Ning has what they call this double viral model, and it's purely economic, that someone comes in, that they're in a network, and then they would start their own Ning network. And it seems to me that in your higher purpose section, you're actually talking about kind of a double viral model, but it's really not economic as much as it is, sort of gift or love. That the moment that you can find a way to help others, that you've really tapped into a very powerful model. And I love that. And do you have any good examples of that you would want to give?
Yeah, so and that's interesting how Ning is set up like that, for sure. Well, the example that I give in the book, and one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, Jane McGonigal, creates these games to help people learn to be better people. And she wouldn't maybe come out and say it like that, but she's now working with the Institute for the Future, and she puts together these exercises for people that, everything from Cruel to Be Kind, this game where you're an assassin and you have to assassinate people with kindness. So you gain points by doing really nice things for people, but that's basically killing them with kindness. And then she creates these ways to think about these future potential awful disasters that are happening in the world. And you get together in teams and you think up new ways to look at the world and change the world, and implement them in order to stop these awful disasters from happening. And Jane has spent her PhD thesis, and now she dedicates her work and her life to these types of games, where my son is in the other room playing probably Halo or something where you shoot each other right online. Jane has spent a lot of time gathering a huge community of people, and the reason that she gathers a huge community of people to do this is when people are doing nice things for one another, and this is research that's been done, they feel happier and better about the world they live in, and better about themselves, and they want to spread it, so they get other people to join it. And so I really love what Jane's doing, but what else can we do? And as you say, a lot of people do this for an economic model, but how else can we build companies and products and networks and that sort of thing that actually help? I think I call it spread love in the book, is help people become better people, teach people properly. And this is a concept that we actually put into actually an educational camp that we did about 2 years ago called Hero Camp. And the idea was to take this concept of spreading love and see if we could design some sort of gamer interaction for teenagers when they're going through probably the cruelest time of their lives, and help them at that really definitive moment of, turning into an adult. I have the idea that actually being a nice person, doing good things for the community, volunteering, that sort of thing, actually is cool, is the way to be, is the way that you want to be going into adult life. But I really like to see somebody be able to make money off of doing something like that. I would really like to see good work rewarded. I think a lot of incentives today are backwards.
So you talk about the gift economy, and that those who perform the most favors and give the most gifts are often the most powerful. It occurred to me that there's an additional insight there as well, which is as you give gifts, you become more capable of giving, meaning as your influence grows, there are better gifts that you can give. And so it's almost like it accumulates in a pretty amazing way, so that as you continue to be generous, you have more opportunities to be generous. And I'm guessing you found that in your own career.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm almost, I have an embarrassment of, I think, an embarrassment of wealth when it comes to not physical material goods, right? I have an embarrassment of wealth of being able to influence people in a positive way, I think. And a lot of that has come from, step by step, person by person, bit by bit, I've been able to grow that influence by doing nice things for other people, or contributing to community projects where I have no direct benefit from. Like, you can't see that, by me doing this, I'm going to get an award, or by me doing this, I'm going to get paid, that sort of thing. That this contributing has led to me being able to be in a life now. I literally don't. I like to laugh and say I don't work. I work. I get to do everything that I love. I spend my days reading and thinking and putting together, hopefully the next big world-changing ideas. And I have the privilege to do that, not because I come from a wealthy family, not because I sold a company for millions of dollars or billions of dollars, not because, I know I have a certain amount of privilege being educated, white Canadian, and having a healthcare system now. But at the same time, I get to do all of this stuff because of these steps over my lifetime of giving and being generous to others. So now it's that reciprocity comes back, and I get generosity back in spades, and it's amazing. And even at this point, if I give away, people understand and recognize that if they ask me, a friend of mine was doing a really great charitable event a couple of weeks ago, and he asked me to post it to Facebook and post it to Twitter and that sort of thing. And I was more than happy to help him, and I helped him achieve his goal. So, down the road, I know that when I need help, he's going to be there without me even having to ask him. And this sort of thing happens over and over again, right, down that path of generosity. So it's pretty amazing, the power that you get. And it's like Spider-Man's uncle said to him, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So What are you going to use? At the end of the day, it's not about the power, the influence. It's about what you do with it. And I'm pretty fortunate at this point, and so I'm an attestant to my own theories.
Well, the best description I've ever read of this was in a book called Greater Than Yourself, a little airplane book I read recently, and I think it was Steve Farber, and he talks about how when you do sort of consciously spend your efforts giving to others, that you become trusted, and that trust carries with it an ability to give more. And I've loved that. Do you know the Jewish folk tale of the long-handled spoons, Tara?
Oh, but I would love to hear it.
So the story goes that a guy is taken to heaven, or I guess he wants to know about heaven and hell, so he's taken to hell first, and his guide shows him hell, and it's all of these people around a table that's got luscious food, but they're in their hands. They how does it work? They're so the spoons are too long for them to actually be able to put them into their bowls to eat the food. So they're in a state of constant frustration. I should remember the story before I offer to tell it. So the hell is this place where the long-handled spoons mean that they can't actually get to the food in their bowl. And then he's taken to heaven, and it's the exact same spread, the feast on the table, and it's the exact same spoons, but the people are feeding each other. And they've understood that by doing so, they'll actually have more food than they can possibly consume.
Wonderful story. I'll have to remember that for sure. I'll have to look it up.
Okay, so we're getting short on time. I definitely want to go into the embrace the chaos, because that was, for me, was also of real significance there. And you tell the story of JetBlue and Twitter, and the Morgan. I don't know if we know more of her name than that, but Morgan is very honest in her communications. She's allowed to be so. Now she becomes kind of her own brand, and I'm thinking that might scare a lot of companies, that somebody becomes sort of known independent of the company. And how important is that to the story? And are we becoming like professional athletes in a lot of ways, that we build up a brand and a reputation by doing these kinds of things, and that benefits the company we work for, but we may be somewhere else in 5 years?
It's actually a really interesting and appropriate question. Well, one of the only way that this would actually become a problem is if the company itself didn't learn from those interactions. So more recently, I've taken poor Frank from Comcast Cares, and I think a lot of people know Frank. He's the guy that started Comcast Cares on Twitter and started raising, I guess, the bar on Comcast customer service by making sure he was taking care of people's concerns as they were sort of tweeting that they were frustrated or waiting for Comcast, or it was out again and they were upset. And I think he took initiative in the company to go forth and take care of this issue. And so this became huge headlines, right? Comcast was all of a sudden revered, and Frank revered within the company. One of the things I took him to task with was, Frank has become this, and the Comcast Cares brand has become the face of Comcast, when Comcast itself didn't seem to change much. People were still getting on Twitter and still having problems. So they were fixing problems for individuals on Twitter, but they weren't fixing the base problems that were leading to those issues in the first place. And so, I started talking about it in a particular presentation I put together called "Your Social Media Strategy Won't Save You." That there's a disconnect between what Frank is doing publicly, and there's this sort of rah around, look at how Twitter can be used for all this good, for a company, but it really is Frank. So if Frank was to leave Comcast tomorrow, would it be the same? Would Comcast they'd probably continue on with the program, but would it continue to have the same heart without Frank there? Now, since then, I've talked to Frank because he saw my presentation and he took issue with it, and we had a good conversation. And he said that he's working on taking the feedback and taking all of the interactions that he's having with people outside of the company and through this brand that he's built. He's, I don't know how many gazillion followers he has, and he's been in the New York Times and been quite popular himself. But so he's taken this amazing brand and taken it into the company. So he's become kind of a customer advocate within the company to actually change things. So the problems that people are having over and over again are changing. Now, whether or not that's going to change the actual heart and soul of the company I'm still a little skeptical about that. And I think it is problematic. It's not problematic that somebody with heart and soul like Frank gets out in front and tries to help people. I think that's awesome. I think what's problematic is that the company itself doesn't value that interaction enough to say, hey, look at that, look over there. Let's learn from that. Instead, usually companies' natural reactions to that is, hey, how can we exploit that? How can we make that people see, can we get some press from this, that sort of thing, rather than, oh, we see what's happening there. Boy, we have a lot to learn from these interactions that Frank is having with people. And maybe we should rethink the culture of our company so that we can be more like Frank.
But interestingly enough, Frank probably moves on just fine, right?
Oh yeah, Frank would. I'm sure that Frank has already had multiple headhunters tracking him down and offering him big amounts of money, and for brands that he would probably have a lot less trouble barking up the corporate ladder with in the first place. I mean, look at one of the early examples, I think, of this, and a person that's become way famous in his own right is Robert Scoble, who, he got powerful enough through his blog that Microsoft could not fire him for saying that Google was doing a better job of what they were supposed to be doing, and ended up leaving Microsoft. And they really haven't, they still have some good people there, but they really haven't been able to replace Robert's voice, and Robert's moved on and done a lot of things since then, and including writing for Fast Company magazine. So, it happens, and I think these companies need to learn that in order to keep these awesome voices, these people with soul and caring for the customer, these companies need to listen to them and start learning from them.
So if anybody has a question, this is a good time to ask. We have got 6 minutes left. And again, I'm not even a fifth the way through the notes I took on the book. But Tara, I'm really loving talking to you, and I'm really appreciative of your taking the time to do so. So Meryl M. asks, what was the one thing you learned from writing this book? Was there one thing?
There's many things. Well, I mean, I think, ironically, the one thing that I learned was working with a publisher is kind of the antithesis to how I preach to work with my community. So I actually put up a blog post, I think shortly before the book came out on the shelves, where I publicly said that I was having a fight with my publisher, and they wanted me to create a list of influential people to send my book to, and I said, well, I actually want to send the book to people that have been really supportive and are really excited to see the book come out. And giving me ideas and helped me do research, the goodness of their hearts, and they're just really jumping at the bits to get the book. And I know they would blog, and my publisher said, but do they have, more than 5,000 readers? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really care if they have more than 5,000 readers. But they're more likely to blog about this. And if I send it to the quote-unquote influencers that you want me to send it to, they probably have a stack of books waiting there to be read that they just can't get around to because they're so busy. But this group of people are excited about the book coming out, so we should send it to them. Because a blog post going to 5 people is better than no blog post going to 5,000 people. And, it's funny because I just finished writing this book that was full of these sort of ideas of like how not to be, kowtowing to influencers and instead to be embracing the community, rewarding the community, being generous with the community. And yet we were still having this argument. So I don't know if that was what the question was trying to allude to, but that was definitely a big lesson in the book.
I think that also helps. One of the other questions someone asked earlier was, how many folks do you follow and how many follow you, and how long did it take? And I think that just goes to show, it's not always the numbers.
Yeah, for me it's not the numbers at all. I think I don't know, I might have checked a couple of weeks ago or seen a couple of weeks. I never check my numbers. I think I have just over 30,000. But how many of those 30,000 are really engaged? How many have I interacted with at any given time?
Exactly.
And how many of those are robots? I'm not sure. I'm more concerned about the people that I interact with on a regular basis and have those conversations with. And when I put something out there that they're giving me really great, valuable feedback and helping me promote things that matter to me. I mean, my favorite place in the whole wide world is my blog and the conversations that happen in the comments there. Twitter is fantastic for a great back and forth, quick conversation. But if you want to get into the meat of a topic and get people really riled up and really telling their personal stories instead of a blog post.
So Tara, quickly, who are you reading?
Who am I reading? I actually switched a while back to the advice of Doc Searles, who is definitely one of my mentors. He said, I think it was in 2006 or 7, in a talk that he did, that he's no longer following people, he's following subjects of interest. And so I did the same thing. So I follow different terms. I follow happiness and BRM, or Bender Relationship Management, which I'm really interested in right now. If you get a chance to look that up, do. Economics. I follow anything that's to do with women in technology, entrepreneurship. I follow anything to do with community. So I got those posts, they started out really slow back when I started following them, and now that in my feed reader, I can't keep up to the amount of posts that are about online communities. It's definitely been a huge growing area of business concern over the years. I'm also really interested in some kind of off-topic, not my regular sort of fare, like studies of the brain, and Kathy Sierra, another one of my mentors and heroes, turned me on to brain studies and brain in psychology, and how the brain actually works and why we react certain ways to things, and found out what an amygdala was and that sort of thing. So these quite often I find new posts being linked to from posts that I'm already like hitting because of these keywords. So nobody in particular, but I do, I do enjoy some different subject matter. And I was recently actually turned on to a couple of different blogs that I have added to my feed reader. One that's not active, doesn't seem anymore, but I've been reading back through her stuff. I don't want to open up another panel because I might slow this down. But basically, it's I think it's Confessions of a Homeless Person. Anyways, it's a brilliant story of this young woman who had, she has a degree. I think she might even have a master's degree, and she talked about getting a job, and then through the economic crisis, she lost her job, and she didn't really have a very good family unit support to fall back on. Her mom had mental illness, and she ended up homeless. And so it's this riveting story about surviving homelessness and still working and looking for work and that sort of thing. And then I also was turned on to Gary Hamel's blog on the WallStreetJournal.com or WSJ.com, who really whose business theories just really make me go hurrah, and are totally in line with the work that I'm trying to push forward. He had a recent post about putting the soul, I think it's the soul, back into business, that just absolutely delighted me. So, those are some of the things that I'm reading and looking at these days. But you know what? I also like books. I love books, and I read a lot of them. And I read a brilliant one recently by a woman named Bridget Brennan, Why She Buys, talking about the growing influence of female shoppers, and really interesting stuff and stories.
Tara, we've passed the hour, and you've been really generous with your time. I'm clapping for you. We share a love, it sounds like Teresa as well, of brain books. Dan Coyle was on last night, and his book, The Talent Code, was really wonderful, and he'd probably enjoy that as well. But thank you for coming tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been great, and this hour went by way too fast. And fortunately, good thing you cut me off at an hour, because I could have probably kept going.
Well, you do have a life, and you have a son in the other room who needs some non-Halo attention.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that with me.
Okay, so I'm just going to put up our thank yous to Learn Central and to C. Bloom and Associates. C. Bloom sponsors my book habit. So like Tara, I love books, and they pay for my books. So much appreciated, Charlene and her gang. And
thank you, Tara.
Tara, we're going to let you go. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you again. Have a great night.
Okay, good night. Appreciate it. And Tara, when you're ready, just close the window out. You're welcome to just close the whole program down, or you can go up to File and Exit to exit the program. So tomorrow night, James Paul G., Thursday, Shell Israel, and lots more fun coming up. I actually have to go. Can't have a post-show chat tonight because I'm headed out to travel tonight. So thanks for coming, everybody, and thanks to Tara again for just a terrific book, one that I know is going to be significant in my own ventures. Thanks and good night.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Teresa.